too, so
Yes, please. Pour it up.
yeah, let me know when we're rolling.
We're rolling.
Levels.
We've been rolling.
Here.
Levels are good.
Good, are we done?
We're 20 minutes in already. Yeah, yeah.
That's it. Thanks for coming. Have a good night.
But okay, so let's just start with, you did some hypnotherapy with me.
I sure did.
And that was fascinating. So I wanted to just get started with, what is hypnotism? Because I think it's something that we all heard, but like, what exactly is it?
And let's attack that other phrase you just said. What did you say? Ego therapy?
Ego
that's-
state therapy.
Ego state therapy, excuse
We'll
me.
get there,
Yes.
but I think we
Let's
need to begin with
crawl
hypnotism.
Before we
Okay.
walk and before we run.
All right.
There's a lot that's
Buckle up.
there's a lot that's misconstrued about it. So maybe start with demystification, which is a lot of times we're working with people who don't know anything about it. We have to demystify it, which is because it's literally the cheapest and worst plot device in a B Hollywood movie. when a writer can't think of anything for like a TV series, like go to hypnosis.
Right.
And I think that the common misconception is that hypnosis is mind control. And the truth is, it doesn't work that way. You cannot coerce someone into doing something they don't want to do. And the way to really view it is that we have, and again, these are all just models. They've existed. These ones have been in development for hundreds of years. So it's like any like psychiatry or whatever. It's a model. You can believe in it or not believe in it. Sometimes you have to see proof of it. And you're like, yeah, now I believe it. And other times you're like, even if I see it, I don't believe it. Everyone's different. So Paul, you want me to?
No, you're good.
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
good.
good. Check. I'm going to take a sip anyway.
I get to the point of panic where I would go, I did click record, right?
Famous for that. So the way to view it is there's a conscious mind and an unconscious mind. Some people call it the subconscious, but just the school that I went to, we call it unconscious. And you can think of the unconscious mind as like being like a giant earth ball, and the conscious mind being like a speck of sand on top of it. Your unconscious mind is running, they say per second, your unconscious mind is processing between 7 to 20 million bits of information per second, and your conscious mind is processing 5 plus or minus 2 bits of information per second.
Wow.
They're very, very, very different. And if you just, and it's a little overwhelming to think, and there's a lot more to it than that. So what, people would say, well, what does your unconscious mind do with all that information? That's a lot to process. You're like, the best metaphor I heard is like a whale. You see like a big like blue whale, and it's just like all this stuff is just getting sucked in. And basically the way it deals with the mass amounts of information on a conscious level, and this is based in the theory of NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. Let me know if this is getting too dry.
No.
Is that it takes that massive information and it either deletes it, distorts it, or Ron forgets the third thing that it does, which I'll remember in a minute.
Well, I feel like it also kind of categorizes it.
That's the process.
Like really just like tree. Like I don't need to see every single leaf, every single branch, tree, boom. Or forest, or just like simplify and move on and just establish like, where's the threat? What do I need to kind of focus on, right?
And literally in saying that, you made me remember the third thing, generalization. That's exactly what it does. And it's you can think of it almost from the development of the primitive brain, right? You're walking across the savannah and you see something in the distance. This thing could kill me. This could end my lineage. It could, so it's really kind of reptilian brain thinking. So that's what it does with these masses of information. And your conscious mind, it's like the best example is if I gave you 3 phone numbers in a row, there's no way you could remember them. Like if I in 2 seconds say, okay, I'm going to give you 3 phone numbers, da-da-da-da, 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 that's 10, it's 30 digits. That's not 5 plus or minus 2 bits of information. Your unconscious mind maybe on some level could pick it up. So your unconscious mind is doing a whole bunch of things. And it is like, for example, just think of the running of our bodies, right? We talk about them, we talk about muscle memory or autonomic systems, but your unconscious mind is regulating. How do you regulate the conversion of oxygen into your bloodstream? Do you say, okay, I'm taking a breath in now, got some oxygen coming in, it's in my lungs, and it's going to meet those, I think they're capillaries, and it's doing that. How do you digest your food? When you think about lifting your arm up, how many muscles are involved? You're not saying, okay, muscle, now you fire, now you fire, now you fire. Now. It's all, your unconscious mind's doing all of that. And there's literally hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of processes that it's doing. So the question was, what is hypnosis? So hypnosis is an ability to communicate with your unconscious mind. And it's a state, and it's a naturally occurring state. We could go into, it's said we go into hypnosis naturally every 45 minutes. And the best way to describe it is what people call highway hypnosis. Whenever someone, I drove over here, you could say, Ron, the last 5 minutes, how many lights did you pass? How many right turns did you make? I don't know. Well, I had to be consciously aware. But unconscious mind does a lot of driving. Think of it tracking all of that information to be able to drive. So that's an example. So when you're in hypnosis, you're just in a hypnotic state. And the best way to describe that, the simplest way, is it's just focused concentration. So if you think about it like meditation, and my teacher says, all meditation is hypnosis, but not all hypnosis is meditation.
Okay.
It's a great way of describing it. Focused concentration.
So if I'm a guitar player playing in a jazz band, I'm probably hypnotized a little bit in that moment because it's all I'm doing, but I'm just thinking like, I'm not thinking every single note, every single thing. It's all kind of flowing pretty fluid. Same with a drummer or whatever.
Where's the placement
soccer
of
player?
How do you know where you're put to with your fingers? Right? It's like, they'll say muscle memory. Oh, I know, like, this is the 3rd fret or something like that. But it's all in your unconscious mind that's guiding it. And it's also, think of it, it's like a bit like an orchestra, to keep with the metaphor. It's like you're listening to the other people.
Sure.
You might be tapping your foot to the beat and you're knowing where your fingers should go. Maybe you're even adjusting an amp, or if you've got something plugged in that you need. So it's really wild. Unconscious mind is so freaking powerful.
And learning a new skill, it starts in the conscious mind. First time you drove, you had to think about everything. You're like, there's no automatic, but the more you do it, it falls into like a habit or falls into the unconscious. Like, is there a name for that sort of conversion
I don't know
or something?
if we actually talked about this, but NLP breaks this down into 4 stages. And it's one of the things I love because it literally anything that you learn to do in life, any learning goes through these 4 stages. So the first one is called unconscious incompetence, and then you go to conscious competence, and then you go to conscious incompetence, and then unconscious competence. And so I think that's right. So the best way to, the metaphor I always use is driving a car, right? So unconscious incompetence, you're not aware that you don't know. You're 6 years old, you're driving in a car. You just are sitting there. You don't know how a car drives. You're like, I get into a car and it takes me someplace.
Sure. I get in a toy car and I just go like this. I assume I know what's going on, but I have no idea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you're in a real one, you're just like, what's happening?
Right.
So that's unconscious incompetence. Then you're 15 and a half years old, depending on your jurisdiction. And you're like, oh, I really want to drive. I don't know. You're consciously incompetent. You're like, I know that I don't know this. And then you go to conscious incompetence. This is the white knuckling, the first drive, if you're driving standard, popping the clutch and stuff like that.
And your parents are like, oh, whoa.
Yeah, and you're learning the process, and then then it basically goes to unconscious competence. That's where everything that I don't want to say an expert in, marginally good at is unconscious. Definitely driving is. So those are the 4 stages, and literally everything that you learn in life, you go through those 4 stages. And if you were introducing it to someone, actually as a teacher, this is pretty compelling, because if you know that structure, then, and again, sorry to get all technical term, there is something that I wish they knew in sort of the colloquial non-NLP world, which is something called a convincer strategy. It sounds like a fancy word. It doesn't mean, it's not as fancy as it sounds. Convincer strategy is how many times does it take you to figure it out? And unfortunately, with the education system as it was designed, it's designed for 3. It's designed generally for the mass group of people. When you were thinking of the sample size as large as possible, you get to show people 3 times. Well, some people, if you can do it in 1, for whatever reason, because maybe you just happen to be good at that, you have an ability, or maybe just pick it up. Sometimes it's just your vertical, right? It's like I'm very mechanically inclined, so I pick up mechanical things very quickly. If you showed me something mathematically, it would take me a long time because that's not how my brain is wired. Doesn't mean I can't. Some people pick it up in one, but when they're convinced their strategy is longer, we would say maybe they're learning disabled or whatever, but maybe it's just that's how long it takes them. And I can share a personal story. So many, many years ago, I taught video editing at a private college, and it's my favorite student of all time. I'm not going to give his last name. His first name is Troy. And Troy was like Eeyore. Love him to bits, but every time he'd always be like moping around and everything was a struggle. And I did something unintentionally. I was like, Troy, smile. And I literally like programmed him when I wanted him to smile because he was always just Eeyoring all over the place. And this is like a really expensive college, and you got to have your own private video editor at the beginning of the kind of nonlinear editing. So having a system is very expensive. And he, as my boss at the time, good friend and boss, who had done a documentary about dyslexia, said clearly he's got dyslexia. And there's a lot of different forms of dyslexia. People always think I see the letters backwards, but there's a lot of it's the way your brain is wired.
Okay.
Anyway, Troy clearly had dyslexia, and one of the things I made the students learn was not doing the video editing with a mouse. Do it using the keyboard shortcuts. You can go much faster. You can get more stuff done. And Troy, it took him triple the amount of time to get through the whole course. So this is 3 semesters. It took him 9 semesters he had to repeat at great cost to himself. But for him, I would literally say, when you press this button, this will happen. And I'd say, press that button, Troy, and see what happens. And he'd do it. And it would be like, whew. And I was like, am I a bad teacher? Am I not getting this? And then what we realized was, and this is when he started to accelerate through the program, is that he had to figure it out himself. He had to learn sort of by trial and error that this did that. And I had long since left that college, but I went to his graduation because I was so freaking proud of this guy because he taught himself. And he went on to be an editor like in the industry, which I was like super pumped because he really, really worked hard. But again, to the point, convincer strategy for him, that might have been 20 or 30 or 40 times. Didn't mean he couldn't get to it.
Right.
It just means it took him that much time.
Well, and the mechanism for him to like receive the information, we've certainly heard about this, but there's like what, auditory, kinetic, and visual. Like some people are visual, some people are just, I just need to hear it.
Yep.
Some people are like, I need to touch it, I need to kind of see it happen. Then I'll never forget it, you know?
Absolutely.
So, sounds like he's more of a kinetic.
I think I don't know what it was. I don't know what kind of dyslexia he had, but I actually think it was related to hearing. So it's the way again, I'm not an expert, but just as I understand it, as it was told to me, is him hearing something. It's not that he's deaf or anything, but the way his brain processes that was different. So his workaround would be very visual and tactile. Kinesthetic is the term for tactile.
I relate. That's like very similar to how my brain operates. I've also often been frustrated with myself as an adult. Like, why are my listening skills so poor? You know, I'm like, I don't listen well enough. Like, what is it? I don't know. But it's not right to say I'm just squirrely. Because even when I'm concentrating, it's like the retention issue. I have to write things down. I have to see them, read them. Yeah. Do them.
But it's easier to beat yourself up about it, but really you just have a different way of absorbing information than somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like listening is not it, you know? Like people were like, I love books on tape. And I'm like, I know, right? My poor husband. Books on tape, not for me. Like I need to see it. Otherwise I'm just gone, lost.
Don't you think that it's a bit of a game changer in just knowing that? Especially as a teacher, where you can, and it's not, I know that there's definitely children, all people who have, legitimate learning disabilities or challenges and things like that. But just knowing that little piece
helps
and
a lot.
It could change everything. And then it's very hard. It's like one shoe fits all, right? It's very hard because when you have a class of 20 or 30 students, you have to teach them, but it's so hard to tailor that. But I think that, if you were a private tutor or if you were able to like isolate them, it's like, I don't think it would be that complicated. You could specialize.
It says your average rate of retention is 3 times. You teach each lesson in a different methodology, So you're presenting the material in 3 different ways.
Yeah.
Hoping it resonates with more and more each method each time.
Smart.
And you said something too about like, I think there's a confidence factor too, because in that setting, just as much as it's frowned upon nowadays, competition is the thing. Human beings are always competitive. And even to be in a classroom full of children, there's hierarchies that form. This is the smarter person. This is the stronger person. This is the person who's socially more interesting or has more command over people. So that's where people start this sort of negative inner talk. What's wrong with me? Or I'm not as smart as that person. It's like, well, maybe you just learn differently.
Yeah, it's easy to focus on the things you lack versus realizing what your own strengths are,
Yeah.
Certainly.
Absolutely. Okay, so with hypnotism.
Yes.
You said like it's sort of speaking to the unconscious, addressing the unconscious. So how is that accomplished? How do I speak to your unconscious and not speak to your conscious brain?
And what the heck did his unconscious say about my conscious self? I want to know.
Steve's here to get answers.
Yeah. And now we switch over to the marital counseling portion of the show.
Yeah.
I need to know.
Well, first of all, your unconscious is always listening, even when you're asleep. Like think about, I'm a pretty heavy sleeper, but my unconscious mind knows if there's a fire, there's an alarm. How? Like, how would my unconscious mind knows it's there protecting me. If I hear a squeak or something in another room, it might know to wake me up, or it might be, if I smell something like smoke, like it will bring me right out. So unconscious mind's always working, right?
How exhausting.
Well, that's the beauty of it. And by the way, that's kind of why you need sleep too, because your unconscious mind can sort all the stuff out that your conscious mind is picking up that it's picking up during the day. And you know that they've done all those studies where if you deprive a person for sleep for 2 or 3 days, like they start to go crazy because they
can't process. You can't make the generalizations anymore. Everything's weird.
And
so the blue effect, that's like the calming effect we get when we see the color blue in like the ocean and stuff. Is that because it's essentially quieting things for our unconscious, that rhythm of the waves, that sound, like that color?
I think it's a more I'm guessing at it. I can't speak to it specifically, but I think that there may be general things that certainly work. And I always see us as hardwired, very old 40,000-year-old machines. Our brains are not. There's no brain evolution. There hasn't been any in 40,000
Well,
years.
it's certainly not as quick as everything else has evolved.
Right. We've evolved in terms of building the tools to serve us, but the way our brain functions, we're still hunter-gatherers. The way, we're still wired. Our brain chemistry hasn't changed. So you might say that stuff like we were all in the womb. All of us were in the womb at some point, and that sort of sound of the heart and the gushing of the blood and the fluids and the sound of the air coming in and out, which we all heard in the womb, literally the first things that we were developing. So yeah, maybe that's going to be a calming effect for us and something that mimics that, like the ocean, but it also might be different, right? For some people, it's like, especially living here in LA, I'm a mountain person. Oh, I'm an ocean person, or like, I'm a desert person. It's those things. And do you learn those things? Or are some of them ingrained? I don't know. I think that, I think it's one of the things I've learned is that everyone wants to generalize. And I don't think generalization really, it can only take you so far. It's the one shoe fits all thing. It's like not really, but what I would say to anyone that I'm working with or just chatting with is like, what does it for you? And then I would add, this is like a hypnosis line. What really does it for you? We had this conversation. The word really is a very powerful hypnotic word. It's like the word, when you say, ask the question, that's the conscious mind answering. When you say really, it's not like your conscious mind second guessing, but your unconscious mind would say, maybe there is something I can say. So
what would I say if I wasn't thinking of what I should say right now? That's what the really does for me.
How would you know that you weren't saying the thing that you wanted to say right now? That might be the more difficult question.
No, but the word really almost gets the subconscious like, oh, okay, we can, like, let's dig deeper, just like reach deeper and see what we pull out.
And I think that you asked about hypnosis. You're calling it hypnotism. I'll call it hypnosis.
Okay.
So the thing is, there's a lot of ways to access the unconscious mind. And that was, to go back to your question. There are many different ways, and there's formal inductions where it's like, I'm going to put you into a relaxed state where I can communicate with your unconscious mind, and your conscious mind will go into the background for a few moments, and your unconscious mind can talk. But your unconscious mind is always working. So there is a whole field of hypnosis called indirect hypnosis, which is literally language patterns, where you're saying things and you're just throwing things into people's minds and also getting their unconscious minds to communicate with you. And I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than how I can explain here. And people might say, like, what are you saying? Like, that's what whenever he's talking to a hypnotist, people who don't know, they're like, are you going to say something? Are you going to hypnotize me?
Right.
And I'm like,
are you hypnotizing us right now?
Yeah. First of all, I absolutely am. And by the way, you're a musician. You're a teacher. You're both literally hypnotists. You hypnotize children and your students. You hypnotize people through your music, and by the way, also through your performance. Sure. And through every time. We're constantly influencing one another, and we're constantly hypnotizing one another. And I think that it's when you put that on the table like that, it's not something, it takes that first demystification. Oh, it's mind control. We're constantly influencing we all have our ulterior motives, and sometimes they're negative, sometimes they're positive, but that's just human nature. And one of the things I love about hypnosis is it really speaks to this whole concept of human communication. That's what we're really doing. We're sort of communicating to the unconscious mind. And yes, you can be very deliberate about it, and you can study hypnosis, and you can learn literally a codex, and I learn these language patterns, and this is how they can be very effective. The ones I use are ones that are used therapeutically. And even in the work that we did, just doing a little inside baseball here, is like when someone comes to work with me therapeutically, I'm showing up and, welcome to the place and make yourself comfortable. But I started working before that. I started working on the call before that. I'm already using hypnosis. I'm using everything I can to glean the information. And in this case, it's to a therapeutic end, which is like people will say, can you hypnotize me? Like it's a thing to do. And technically, I could do an induction, which is a word that we use to get you into a hypnotic state. But it's like, what do you want? It's like getting into a cab and it's like, drive me somewhere. It's like, I don't know where to drive you. Where do you want to go? So in this case, and sometimes, when people do come to me for a therapeutic, it's like they don't know what they want or they can't articulate it. That's a great way to connect with the unconscious mind. So that's sort of what we call the pre-talk, right? Just getting to know someone, doing an intake. As I listen to what they have to say, I start to get a sketch of what in NLP they call their model of the world, which is like, I have no idea how you live your life, but when you talk to me and I break down your language patterns, I start to see through your eyes. And if I can see through your eyes and I can see what you perceive as your limitations, then I can help to create a program, for use of a word, to allow you to get to where you really want. That's how it's done therapeutically.
What are some examples of like language people might use that would give you an indication of how they see the world or see their limitations?
Well, I'll give you a really simple one. Let's do an exercise.
Let's do it.
I love that.
A live exercise.
Are we hypnotized right now?
You're so hypnotized.
Once we're hypnotized, please let me know so I can tell the others.
Yeah. It's like one of the side effects of hypnosis for some people is time distortion. So when we're done, it'll be like, this is only 5 minutes long, but my watch says it's 6 hours later. How did that
Cameras
happen?
died
Exactly. All the
long time
batteries
ago.
are dead. It's a different season outside.
Yeah.
So this is really simple. I may have done this with you. So if I have but
that's okay. Let's do it all.
Okay. So it's a very, very simple exercise. So you both are interviewing the same candidate. I'll be the candidate. Actually, you're interviewing two candidates. I'm going to represent both of them, candidate A and candidate B. So what I'm going to do is they're going to answer a question that you ask them. And I'm going to tell you what both of their answers are. And as soon as I'm done, I'm going to point at you and I want you to tell me who you hire, A or B. Just say A or B.
Okay.
All right.
So I'll just ask a question.
No.
You're going to give us the question.
You're just going to react.
Okay.
But all you have to do is I'm going to
Easy.
close your eyes if you want. I'm just going to give you their answers to a question.
Okay.
And then I'm going to point at you and you say who you'd hire, A or B. Just say
Okay.
A or B. So
Okay.
candidate A. I'm not always the first in the office, but I stay until all the work is done. I'm not always the first in the office, but I stay till all the work is done. Candidate A. Candidate B. I always stay till all the work is done, but I'm not the first in the office. I always stay till all the work is done, but I'm not the first in the office.
A.
Ding. Okay. Both winners. There are prizes on the way out, and I'll explain why. So you asked an example of language.
I was like, what is the right answer?
Yeah, exactly.
I hope but A was my instinct.
okay.
You know what my hunch is?
Yes.
Because it's like leading with taking ownership of a flaw, which is like humbling and relatable and seems really forthright.
To me, it was kind of like the feeling you leave me with. Like, I don't always show, but I'm your guy. Versus, I'm your guy, but I'm going to let you down sometimes. So like my last taste in my mouth was negative for B, positive for A.
Okay. And
Maybe I'm over analyzing because we're doing this exercise.
I think neither of you are over analyzing. This is the power of language. So I'll start with this. A is the answer, and for you it's the answer, but it's the answer based on this example, based on this language pattern. So first I'll say semantically, I said the exact same thing. There is no difference between what I said. Logically, the same. They literally say they're going to do the same thing. The key word here is the word but. So in NLP, there's obviously you can focus on many words and patterns. This is a single word though. The word but has a neurological predisposition to delete what's before it. So let's recap. I'm never the first in the office, but I stay till all the work is done. What's your unconscious mind hearing or prioritizing?
I stay till all the work is done.
Right? And again, you see how that you started to fathom it, the other person, and then it's like, I always stay till all the work is done, but I'm never the first in the office. You're hearing I'm never the first in the office, all because of the word but. So whenever I share that example with people, and that's why you're tilting to A, you pick candidate A. Now just think about in life how and when you use but. So this is kind of, now you're at conscious incompetence, right? On our state, you're like, I learned that. I didn't know that before. Now you know that. So if you were to spend the rest of like your day and your week and think or just listen to how people are using the word but, people do it. I call them butters. When you're saying something like, well, I believe that the next president should be, and they're like, but, and they're like literally trying to delete what you're saying.
Right, sure.
Like to delete your argument into, it's not just for them, it may be for the people that are present, and they don't realize they're doing it. And there's lots of other examples of words like that, and it gets very sort of deep into language patterns. But I find it just fascinating using that example because you talk about that. So how do you use that therapeutically? It's just one word, how you do it. A person would say it's like, I'm never going to reach my goal. And I said, but you could apply yourself a different way. So literally, just use it with students. I'm telling you, this is it's like a crazy superpower just with this one word. You see, not manipulating, hashtag manipulating, but you see you can literally change people's outlook.
You know what I do see popping up in schools a lot lately is the power of yet. So it's like in retraining kids when they say, I can't do that, you say, I can't do that yet. Just so you know that you are capable of getting there. You just you haven't gotten there yet.
That's one of those words, and you tack it at the end, especially for goal setting. It's like, I can't ride the bicycle yet. All of a sudden, like just that word, and that's the power of this sort of language, just by little tiny things. And it's really when you start to. When I first started learning, this is like 15 years ago now, when I did my NLP practitioner certificate, it was like, I was like Neo when he came out of the Matrix. I was listening to everyone talking, going, this is what they're doing. And it's like, you could like see, and again, going back to this NLP concept of the model of the world, I could really see where people felt their limitations were, or you could see their motivations very quickly. And I was like, this is powerful stuff. And I was like, that's where I found the rabbit hole and went down it. So
it's quite a rabbit hole.
It is. And it's like never ending. So.
Yeah. I mean, even the omission of the word but can be very powerful too. In, when we're like making music and stuff, so be like, let me record that. And if, I avoid but, or saying it's like, yes. And after you do it, I'll do it. And then we'll see what's better or whatever, instead of saying like, no, I'll do it. Like I try to never say no or never say but, like when we're recording. It's all like, yes, all good, bring it all. Don't shut anybody's like world down.
You said the magic word that I when I was a kid, I did improv, and there's a game called the yes and game. And now it's sort of trickled up into the mainstream, but that's really powerful too. It's really powerful also for working with kids. When you see them butting each other or whatever, you just say like yes and it's amazing. It really does. Like you'll even see the emotional state change, like yes and it just, as opposed to shutting people down. And
we do in the school both and, like both are true, and then you can.
It is, and is a connector word, yeah. And is very hypnosis. So they're very hypnotic in its own way as a connector word. And what I mean by that is there's a hypnotic induction, and it's very common, and we see this a lot in politicians, is the run-on sentence. Where
does it begin? Where does it end? Nobody quite knows.
Well, you are going into trance. Is what's happening when it goes on and on and on. And there's also, there's certain ways that you can use like nominalizations and unspecified verbs, and an unspecified verb is something, a nominalization is something like you can't fit in a wheelbarrow. It's like affection or charm or courtesy. What does it look like, right? So you can, so when you start using those words, there's also, and you see this a lot in, you hear it a lot with people who are in kind of culty things. They use what's called like word salad with ands. So they just are talking, and they're talking in vague ands, long sentences, vaguenesses. And it's like, but it's to lead you somewhere. And I have, my own, in terms of my own kind of red flags, when I see that, when there's no logic to what they're saying.
Right.
Then all of a sudden I'm just like, and they won't stop talking.
Sure.
A lot of times they're trained this way, but they don't even know that they're doing it. They were just, someone taught me to do this, and you kind of talk on and on. But it's Vegas, and the idea is it gets you in a trance. And once you're in a trance, then you're more susceptible for someone to throw in a suggestion, that, and a lot of times, not to get into the whole cult thing, but it's like there is the very, very famous, world famous hypnotist named Igor Ledachowski's English. Very interesting story. Great hypnotist, like fantastic. And Igor talks about something called the Salami Method. I don't know if I've shared this with you. It's like, imagine you walk into a deli and they've got the 8-foot salami hanging from the ceiling, and you want that whole salami. So you walk in, you say, love your deli, everything looks great here. Can I get a sample of that salami? And they're really nice, and they slice you off a piece from the bottom, and you eat it. I'm like, that's delicious. And then maybe you come in the next week, and if you do this often enough, you will eat the whole salami, like a little bit at a time. The Salami Method is working with people really, really slowly to influence them. It's very, very hard to influence people quickly who are unmotivated, right? But if someone's on the fence, it's sort of like it's like a scale, right? Just keep putting one more gram, and eventually it's gonna tilt over.
Like start with something so easy, like to agree with.
Yes.
The world is complicated. Like it is. The world is complicated.
That's right.
And then like you just keep adding to it until it's like, so aliens are gonna pass over. We have 5 days. We got to be in the right place so that they take us.
We better drink the Kool-Aid now, put on the sneakers, because, and that's how that works too. And it is like, death by 1,000 cuts when in the negative aspect of it. You can also go in the other direction, use it therapeutically, right? Where you just start challenging people's belief systems that are not working for them, that are limiting. And you're like, yeah, but what if?
You just keep kind of asking the questions.
Chip away, Salami Method.
Right.
to be able to get there. And then there's a lot of these things are all in the mainstream right now. So there's like things called yes sets and compliance sets. So, and this is like literally almost from the 50s or 60s sales thing. So when you get a person to say yes 3 times, you're sort of tilting the field towards them saying yes again. When you get them to say no 3 times, they're going to say no.
Right.
So, and then it's like a yes set is you get them to say yes, and then a compliance set is when you get them to do something small. So first you get them to say yes 3 times. And it can be something innocuous like, isn't this a beautiful summer we're having? Like, it's not too hot, not too cold. Yeah, it is. And it's like, and isn't it nice to have air conditioning here when it's hot out? Yeah, it is. You're both nodding, by the way.
Right.
That's hypnosis, buddy.
It is.
Wow.
So it's like, and then it's like I'm just going to adjust my headset. You know, I don't want it to be too tight. So it's like, feel free to adjust if you want to. And then you might, all of a sudden you're compliance, right? Like when you start doing what I say. And it's an old technique, but our brains are old.
Sure. Yeah.
Sinister consequences, but could be very beneficial if used with a caring caretaker.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, you know, in sense of like teaching a child or, you know, hosting an art class or producing music, like it's not manipulation, but you're sort of like suspending this mood. I was talking about this with New Beat Fund. What they do is sort of hypnosis. If you're a producer, you have an artist there, you try to keep them in this like flow state. You try to keep them not really second guessing themselves, like keep the mood good, keep the progress moving. There's kind of this like, you're holding up this like vibe that you're just trying to maintain the whole time. And it's sort of like a hypnosis to keep it there.
It very much is.
Same with a stand-up comedian. You know, like I'm just, as a stand-up comedian on stage, I'm just trying to hold the audience here in this hypnotic state.
And it's like, to continue with your metaphor, I think it's like holding water, which is almost impossible.
I'm sorry, but I keep visualizing that water too. Like water's going to spread and flow off a landscape either way, but it's sort of like this allows you to slow the water, spread the water, sink the water where you want it, kind of manipulate it as it moves through so that it's not just a lost resource. It's like you're channeling this resource.
Very, very much so. And I think also you have it when you have it. And I think if you want to talk about flow state, to me, I think there's a lot of challenges to that. Like I think as human beings, we want the simplicity of the binary. It's this or this. Mm-hmm. And the reality is it's that or that for a little period of time, then it becomes this massive gray area.
The black or white is part of us compartmentalizing, like simplifying things in our brain. So, nuance is so much more complicated to process.
Very much so. And it's also in our animal brain, right? It's like, you know, flee, fight, freeze. Like what's our instantaneous reaction, which is always binary because it's instantaneous, to what stimulus is coming in. And is it, you know, it's threat assessment. We're still on why do so many people suffer from anxiety? We live in the most comfortable situation we've ever lived in as a species, ever. Shelter, food, abundance of food, like cleanliness, healthcare. It's like
HBO,
entertainment, right? You know, even like you know, sexual access, like all of these freaking things, right? We have, and yet why is there still so much anxiety? Like a lot, and because we're hardwired for that. We're hardwired for threat assessment, and you know, anxiousness is like, you know, what if this all goes away? I mean, I'm obviously taking a very, very simplistic brush to paint this. Of
course. But we're also taking in so much more information that our brains, you know, our 500,000-year-old brains are used to processing like the ocean. You know, it's big, it's simple, it comes, there's waves, versus looking at, even walking through an airport, the amount of information you process, like, and we're all doing that all the time, every day. Like we're just grinding these computers and they're uncomfortable.
It's interesting too, because, you know, talking about driving, and I had a very clear moment not that long ago on the road where I kind of came to driving and I was like, I don't know where I was for the last 3 miles at least. Like I wasn't really there. And so I don't know. It's amazing how sharp and jarring it can be to like come back in.
Mm-hmm.
You became consciously aware.
That
you had been.
That I'd been unaware.
And it does tag in and out like that.
I had a gnarly one.
That wasn't
one
what I was going to say. I forgot what I was going to say. So hopefully it comes back.
It will. By the way, it will come back.
Thank you.
That was hypnotism right there.
Let it back.
Direct suggestion.
I was just going to say I had a gnarly one of those one time where I drove straight from LA to Dallas, 20 hours straight.
Okay, sorry. Pause just for a second because she remembered.
Go.
I was just thinking how interesting that with the Delta and that little internet outage just last week, all of this system of airport travel that we take for granted, we do unconsciously. We don't even realize how many logistics it takes to get from, here to Dallas and all the good stuff. Right. And then the outage happens. And now it's like this shift in awareness to revisiting the process, thinking about it, thinking about what it takes to function.
Like COVID with our healthcare system too, made us really think whoa, shit. When shit shuts down, it's kind of a mess. Or even just the whole system of transporting goods, the logistics of getting food all over the world and just medicine.
All the unseen things that are that are just sort of operating too.
That we take for granted.
Yeah.
For sure.
That we take for granted.
Okay, so anyway, I'm trying.
LA to Dallas.
You're a great host. You're really keeping us on track.
Yeah, thank you.
We got time here.
LA to
Let's do
Dallas.
a commercial.
Okay, so it's 20 straight hours. It's a lot sitting in the car. So at night, I'm starting to kind of like trip, basically, because I've just been watching the lights and the road, and I'm just I'm basically hallucinating. So I'm driving through the desert. My next memory is this. And I just wake up and I'm in bumper to bumper rush hour traffic in Fort Worth, Texas. But it's daytime now. I have no idea how I got here. I'm looking around who did I hit? Where are the police? I thought it was so crazy. But no, I'm just in traffic driving. And some part of my brain kept me going while the rest of me slept.
Well, your unconscious mind definitely was driving. When you were telling me that story just now, I just kept thinking of that Simpsons episode where he falls asleep driving and he imagines he's on a cloud, and then he hears this tut 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 tut, and then you see him in real life and he wakes up and there's a fence and he's driving in a field.
That's what I was expecting.
It is, yeah, obviously super scary too. I've done that, the kind of nod off and the that.
But hours had passed.
That's
lost time. Yeah, that was
when
never
again. That's too much.
You were on the UFO. That's why
I did it. They dropped me right there.
They teleported you back in. Again, super power. Definitely. By the way, safety. Pull over. Take a nap.
Yeah, it was a mistake.
I wonder if your mind was really focused on one thing, and that distracted you so much from the road, or if I don't know, just the repetition. I have a hard time driving that much at night in general. The lights I find disorienting and just sort of, that constant flow of light. It's hard not to get into a trance.
That in and of itself is hypnotic in kind of a different way. But let me add something else to go back to our touch point. Let's talk about the unconscious mind. Your unconscious mind is your greatest protector. And remember the first thing I said, which was, hypnosis is, people misconstrue. They think it's mind control, the B-movie plot. And it's not. It's because your unconscious mind is protecting. It's literally operating your immune system right now. It's fighting off cancer cells. It's fighting off infections. It's filtering the air that's coming through your nose from all the particulates, all this stuff that's happening. And it's also, your emotional protector and your mental protector and stuff like that. So you gasping and waking up, I think, is your unconscious mind saying, wake up, we're not doing this anymore.
Yeah, enough is enough.
Yeah, maybe you need to pull over, have a nap, chew some mint gum, turn up the cold. Those are the things I used to do when I got sleepy driving. Open the windows, anything that's going to shift you out of it. You said something very interesting that came up in the masterclass that I was teaching, where you talked about, and I actually was sharing this thought with someone, and they were so offended by it, they literally walked away from me. Amazing. Not that it's the least offensive thing, but I still believe our brains are 40,000 years, about That's when they stop, not developing. That's the level that they were at. And we are stimulating them more than they are used to being stimulated. I think you said we should be, we're used to looking at the ocean, not walking through an airport, tracking all this stuff and being on our phone and listening to music and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. Not that we're incapable of it, but it becomes very taxing. And the word that I used in this masterclass, and what I'll use here, is what I call bandwidth, right? Our brains are freaking amazing. And our unconscious mind, we know how much information it can track. 3 to 20 bits of information per second. I do think, though, that there is, and this, by the way, not a doctor, this may be the reason that we're having a lot of this mental health crisis, anxiety, and all this other stuff, is we're we're so back in the PC days, over cranking your processor. I don't know if that term brings anything up. It's like, not that I was that kind of a nerd.
I pictured a robot jacking off.
It is like, yeah, exactly, yeah. Which is
really now cranking the processor.
By the way, now who's hypnotizing who?
Yeah.
Get that out.
Stop putting these images in my brain.
Delete that.
Robotic.
Over cranking the processor was like literally like asking it to perform more functions, and the side effect was actually overheating, and so sometimes your
system overload.
Right, and your computer would shut down or something like that. And that's the same thing. We're asking a lot of it. It's because we are, we've got these really great hypnotic devices called smartphones, and they're bombarding us with stuff, and they stimulate dopamine, so that it continues to have us look at these things. But just everything, even just driving. And as you said, what if you had to stop for 3 hours a day and just look at the ocean, or watch grass grow, or watch the sky? Really feel that you wouldn't feel as much anxiety, because there's not a lot of processing there. Right? It's just like watch your goldfish swim around the freaking bowl.
Which this is the beauty of like of meditation, daily meditation.
Well, that's what now
like
we're
just
actually
giving your brain like silence for a moment.
I wonder what the average amount of unconscious thought happens when a woman looks in the mirror versus when a man does. Because I would guarantee it's probably like 1,000 to 10.
I
thoughts running through the mind.
And by the way, across the board with a lot of different things, right? Like that's a perfect example of just the difference. But it's like, what are guys doing that they're like criticizing themselves? And so let's take that up to the 10,000 foot view, which is back to bandwidth. I think we overtax our systems because we're living in a modern world and we have a choice. So yes, people do social media detox, or they're doing meditation, they're incorporating it in their lives. We've all done breath work together. Breath work is as organic and human as you're going to get, right? You're like literally, flushing your nervous system, right? It's a nervous system reset. So I do think those things are important. Look, it's not that you don't have to, trying not to live in the modern world. It's not about being a Luddite, but just to understand that when you're overtaxing the machine, it's going to have these repercussions and side effects. And a lot of people are like, they're talking about, what's the next step? It's like, you want to have implants and stuff in our brains. And it's like, it's not that they can't. We're just overusing the tool, that in the same way that in the old days when your car was overheating, you have to pull over and let the rad cool down, then you can keep driving. And that's why people have to do, and there's other aspects of that, like anything that doesn't incorporate the mind in a logical sort of attention way. Like I love baking. I'm not a good baker. I'm like, you take the box of cake and you put the 2 eggs and stuff in it. But I love it because it's so tactile. It's so kinesthetic. I'm doing this. I'm whipping stuff up. I'm cracking eggs. I feel stuff on my hands.
I want to bake something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Damn it.
Make a few more loaves of bread in this house. Whatever. But
one last cake.
There's exactly.
Pack the pans. We're out of luck.
You know what I mean? Pies, whatever it is. And for me, there's just the act of even like thinking about chopping and stuff. It's so when I do it, it's meditative in the sense that I'm not using I'm using my eyes, but they're diminished, right? It's like activities, and even people who do a lot of manual labor too. Like it allows you to kind of go there, and anything again to take flow. Flow, and it just forces you to. You're using it's very different to the way your brain processes that kind of stimulus. kinesthetic stimulus versus visual. Most people, I think the numbers are like 60% of people are, not that you're not exclusively, you're all your different senses, but NLP would say, 60% of people are visually oriented. And then something like 20 to 30% are auditory, right? So that's the primary, in NLP they call it representational systems, which is a fancy way of saying senses, because that's how the external world is represented to your brain, to your unconscious mind, which we can't see. We can't say where it is in our brains. And then some people are kinesthetic, and there's ways you can identify them by the language they use and things like that. There's certain qualities, but not for right here or right now.
Versus like, I hear that versus I see that.
That's exactly
means a lot to you.
That would be,
I got a wink on that one, folks.
I feel you.
I
like
feel
there's a lot. So those are ways, like when you're learning NLP, if you were wanting to understand a person's default or primary representational system, you would ask calibration questions and see how they responded. And then you would say it wouldn't take you very long. There's other things as well. That's using language. You can also, people who are visual tend to speak faster. They tend to, they're also speaking a little higher, like they're not speaking from their diaphragm. They're speaking from up here. Auditory people talk slower and deeper, higher. It's, again, generalizing a little bit, and very, very few people are kinesthetic. Don't forget, there's still like olfactory and gustatory, right? Which that's no one's default system. But we also know that olfactory is when you smell something, there is no brain it goes right into your brain. It's not
so
being
wild. That
filtered.
Smell.
Yeah. Wow. That's why they say like smell is such a strong sense, like tied to memory and stuff like that.
No processing. Boom, it goes right in there.
Straight to the dome.
Yeah.
That's why cocaine is so powerful too.
That's where it's getting processed.
Wow. I had something.
It will come back.
Thank you.
Point at him. Tell him it will come back.
Well, okay. So with this isn't it, but with NLP.
Yeah.
What's the simplest way to explain NLP for people who don't know?
It's real complicated. NLP stands for neuro-linguistic processing.
Programming, no?
Programming, thank you. I'm literally hearing Lane, who says, like he always says it wrong. It's neuro-linguistic programming, and it's this idea, and there's so many ways to describe it. It's hard to do it simplistically, and yet it's a very sort of basic thing. But the concept is that through language patterns affect our neurology, and our neurology affects our language patterns. It's biodirectional, and we talked about just but earlier on, right? And then you can start to identify it, and there's like more. You could say that the unconscious mind has pure grammar, and as it filters through the conscious mind, that grammar gets distorted, deleted, or generalized. And by looking at those, we have a better idea of the person's map of the world. Again, sort of complicated, but the idea, I like thinking of it as programming. Right, that we all have programs. You have a program for how you put your socks on, or how you brush your teeth, or how you do a complex task, how you get to work in the morning. And they all serve you in some way, except they're just programs. And we know that there are programs. And I love this part of NLP. So NLP never talks about something being good or bad. They really talk about it being resourceful or unresourceful. So if your goal, for example, was weight management, and you went out for fast food 3 times a day, it's not a bad choice. It's not a resourceful one for weight management. That's the best. So it's like,
right. Does it fit the goal?
Does it fit the goal? Yeah. Are you on track, or are you not on track? And if you are on track, then, and just the simplicity of that is kind of beautiful. Yeah, I think that's, without getting...
No, that was good. So that leads me to, like, we can use NLP to figure out how someone else's brain works, how they view the world. But you can also go the opposite way, where changing your own language, you can change yourself. Like, I know it's hard to pay attention to how you say things, but if you catch every time you say can't or won't or never or but.
Using yet... You can do that all the time with yourself.
And it totally changes your whole mindset by changing your own language.
That's when they talk about the neuroplasticity, right? Neuroplasticity is essential concept of NLP, or not concept, but it utilizes that neuroplasticity. And yes, how do you affect neuroplasticity? Is a lot of different ways. One of them is through language. That's the basis of NLP. So, by changing your language, and it's really, really trippy. And also, you learn a lot about yourself, because you learn, first of all, you're listening to yourself talk. You're like, oh my God, do I say that? And then you'll feel the discomfort of changing that. And sometimes we really grip onto those programs. And that's, again, sort of a path to therapy, whether you're doing work on yourself or whether you're going to someone help. The awareness is a beautiful thing. I'm a big believer in self-discovery and self-awareness. I think that everyone should go down that path. And as you do it, you realize, oh, okay. And when you learn to do it from the lens of like self-love, as opposed to saying, oh, I'm dumb because of this, it's like, no, what if you just said it's not resourceful for what you want? Or what if it gives you more clarity towards the goal that you want? Oh my gosh, I've really been impeding my desire to succeed in this goal, and I can hear it in my language. Mm-hmm. Well, how do we change that? Try changing your language. By the way, I used a bad word there. We'll talk about it. It's a good segue.
What? Try?
Try.
Mm.
Try.
Do or do not. There is no try.
I don't know if
Yoda said that in Star Wars.
If George Lucas studied NLP, it was flourishing around the era of that, and in that part of California.
Wow.
So I don't know if he knew that, but let's talk about language again. And this is another easy one. But was a super easy one. Try has a neurological predisposition to failure, and I'll share this with you.
I know, because when I'm trying to get out of plans that I don't actually want to make, I'll say I'll try to make it.
That's it. And what are you really saying?
I don't see myself making it.
Not coming.
I'm not going to be there.
It's a no.
No.
I'll try.
I'll try.
Gonna happen.
And I'll say, so if that's too harsh, I'll say I'll do my best. Do my best to be there. And then I just feel like an asshole when I don't follow through on my plans.
Because it's not really saying much about your best, right? It's like, whoops.
I gotta change
or
that.
anytime you tell like your boss, like, yeah, got a lot on my plate, but I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try and get that done today. You're basically letting them know, like, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah.
But I wish I could.
And
I'll get close.
Here's the thing. They already know it.
For sure, they hear it.
That's the thing too. But I just want to flag what you said, because it's fascinating that this is the beauty of it. Just in that little exchange, there's a discovery about yourself. You're like, I should change that language. Like, that's amazing. Like, that's the power of this stuff, where you can.
If I change the language, I take the guilt out of my emotional state for later feeling like I haven't met a promise or an intention.
Exactly. So you should change your language to no, I won't come.
If I really mean no, of course. Yeah, because then when Saturday night comes around and it's 7:00 and I'm like, ooh, this is the time I should be leaving to make it to that thing, I don't have things popping up.
Absolutely.
It's the self-discovery portion is huge because you realize you learn something about yourself. I was watching your face as you were learning about that, and you were like, and I teased you about it. I don't want to say I'm doing, because that's not my best. And for you, the integrity around saying your best is like, you have been using that as a try. Like, essentially you're using it as a try, and you don't like it. Mm-mm. Like, I was seeing that you don't like it, and you're like, I think I'll have to change that. That's great. And you're even, and one of, see, look at you all hypnotizing each other. You're also saying,
that's healthy, right?
I told you what happens all the time. You're also, see, it's interesting because both of your models of the world just met there in a difference. Yours was, when you interpreted what she said, you were like, say no then. And you might be like, I don't, whatever you have around the word no, maybe you don't want to be perceived as someone who's not, doesn't want to be difficult, or you want to let them down easy, whatever it is. Either way, it's an awareness. There's no judgment around it, but to walk away just in that little exchange and say, wow, I learned something about myself, that maybe I have an issue saying no, or maybe I'm very other-oriented. And I'm so other-oriented that I'll literally tell kind of myself and them a lie instead of, you're like, no. And that's fine.
I mean, I've been working on it. I would probably often say, oh, dude, I'm going to try. I'll try to make it. I mean, I've definitely told a handful of people, like, we'll try to get together before I leave town. But
Look at you. That's your
Probably not
1-2
gonna happen.
But
punch.
we're going to be really busy and
But-
it likely won't happen. I think for me, part of it is like wanting to leave an option open, like wanting to allow myself the space to not go if it's not going to serve me in that moment and there's something else I have to do. But
Let me ask-
sometimes that comes at a conflict because I do want to genuinely show up in support of this, but it's like sometimes that's at odds with other things that
Let's
I
do
also
this.
have going on.
Let's do a little therapy.
Yeah, let's.
I would like
therapize me.
I would like you to, in the safety and comfort of this space, to articulate a phrase which is very honestly saying what you want to another person. If you could say it without worrying that they might not like it, or I don't want to let them down, or I'm not sure myself, what's a way that you could say that?
I could just say, I think I've got too much going on, but I really wish I could be there to support you. But I'm not going to be there. But I can't make it. Can't make it.
Did you notice the word she was using a lot there?
But
Yeah, you butted yourself 4 times. Great, by the way, but you got to the end and you said what you really wanted. So again, that's kind of just this little self-analysis thing. And by the way, nothing's wrong with that. Thank you. This is a great exercise to just look at yourself in the mirror and say, just learning about yourself, and also learning, like it starts to give you, it shows you the guardrails that you've put up in your life, or maybe they're learned guardrails because of the way you were raised. We're obviously influenced by a lot of people, our parents and the loved ones around us and our peers and stuff as we're growing up. So they can affect us in many different ways. And that's the beauty of this, because it's a program. Those guardrails are a program. If a lot of the self-development is about striving to be, well, for me anyway, to be my most authentic self, to be my most sincere self. How often can I achieve that, at the 100%? I can't do it all the time because I'm also other-oriented. And there are sometimes I will put other people's needs maybe momentarily ahead of my own, or there'll be different circumstances, situations where I play a little bit looser with the rules around that program for whatever reason. It's like, I'm just going to think of a random one too. It's like I was cornered in a store because I'm very chatty, and I was having a chat with this elderly woman, and it's like the social accepted norm of how long a conversation with a stranger should happen is over. And
we
now
did it.
We did it. And I am charmed, and I'm glad that I could connect with another human being that I didn't know, and also taking more respect for people who are lived more years than me and may have
need more socialization.
Yes, I was actually just thinking I was being more selfish. So it's like I can learn from them by seeing through their eyes. And yes, also just like respect for the fact that maybe a person doesn't have a lot of contact like that. And then at one point, it's like I'm doing all the indicators of like the gravity of the door is pulling me. My body language, I'm turning my shoulders away, and my head is not as oriented. Mm-hmm. Okay,
the
so
phone comes out, you check a text, all the signs.
It's just, and then all my strategy is what's the ripcord on this situation. Again, that's just an example in that case where I want, there's a part of me that wants to be courteous. And then I have developed a nuance in that to say it's like, I can't continue to chat with you. I have to go to my next thing. And then at that point, it's like if they're still, most people would accept that. And then otherwise it would just be like, no, I have to go. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Good day, sir.
Yeah, I think
said good day.
One thing I noticed about what both you're saying is, well, what you said, I love you, I support you, but I can't make it. Which, according to what we talked about the word but, I love you, I support you, but I can't make it.
That's canceled out now.
What about, I can't make it,
but I love you
but
and I support you.
I love you.
Very excited.
And I support you.
For you
like
tonight.
Leave it kind of on the note. And then same with, I can't keep talking, I have to go, but it's been amazing talking to you, and I hope you have a great day. All they're hearing is, it's been great talking to you, and I have a great day. Like it's kind of, Maybe that's the approach.
Oh, you're flexing. Yeah. You're flexing,
Learning.
buddy.
Or the students become the teacher here.
Flexing. Flexing.
Sorry, go ahead. Did you have something?
No, I'm just.
Well, one thing I wanted to talk to you about, something I had no idea about that you brought up is ego state therapy, which you talked about earlier. And Christine said, "What the heck is ego state therapy or ego state? What is an ego state at all?"
Okay, much longer. Just did a masterclass on this, teaching an intensive course now, 6-week intensive course.
Well, here we're going to give it away for free.
Exactly.
Thank you, Ron, for being here.
You'll get a lot. I give a lot of value, but it could not be given away if I was.
Of course.
I spoke for 2 hours last night, and my students are. I'm just like, I have to let you go. It's not fair. So it's a model, like anything else. It's just a therapeutic model. By the way, I can share this with you. The masterclass is free. Anyone's welcome to take it. So it's online. I can share how to connect.
Cool. We'll definitely put it in the description.
Perfect. So it's a model, and the model is based. It actually was developed like from the very outset of psychology and psychiatry. Actually, starting with Freud. You know, he had the id, the ego, and the superego. But at its most simplistic level, it's this idea that every human being. The model states that every human being is made up of a composite of different subpersonalities, and together they make up a whole personality. And these different personalities show up based on context and situation and circumstance. And numerically, you might have 5 to 15 very resourceful ones, the ones that are running your life, that are good at multitasking. They're essentially professional you. And then those ones are usually associated with the conscious mind. And then we have hundreds, literally, of unconscious ones that sometimes they only show up once in your life. I had an ego state, and to keep the story short, I had an ego state that was associated just with playing with one toy when I was a child. Maybe it was the way I talked to the toy. I don't know, but through a process, I discovered it. That was it. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure if that toy showed up again, I would have that feeling. That's what people talk about too when they see something in their childhood and they become like a child again. Mm-hmm. It's like when an adult goes to Disneyland and they're like, and they're like acting like an 8-year-old. They're acting with the joy of an 8. Why? Well, because, you know, that ego state that was there, that was really happy. And I had that experience myself, originally from Toronto. And when I was a kid, we would go to this amusement park called Ontario Places, built on a man-made island, and had rides and all the junk food and stuff. And I would go there every summer as a kid. And they had closed it down. The amusement park was long gone. And then they had an art exhibit on it a number of years ago. So they reopened this portion of the island. And I happened to be walking by. And as soon as I was in bliss, I couldn't describe it. Because the last time I'd been there was when I was 6 years old. And I was having the time of my life. There was none of the same stuff there. But to be in that presence triggered it for me. In NLP, we call that having an anchor. Ego states are basically these subpersonality parts, and as I said, there's many resourceful ones, as the 5 to 15, and then unconscious mind could have hundreds. Maybe they show up once, and then what happens is there are some of these ego states. There's some of these parts which are traumatized. And they're traumatized, they're associated, you know, maybe it's because of something that happened to you during development, an actual trauma. Maybe it's a part that's in conflict with another part. And the term that ego state therapy uses, and it was developed, you know, it's developed by this husband and wife team, Watkins and Watkins, and they are the ones who really started solidifying it. And then a guy named Gordon Emerson kept going with it. And that's where a majority of my understanding of it comes from in my readings and the way that I teach it. And essentially, these parts are, they're called vaded states, like Darth Vader without the R, vaded states. And these parts are invaded by fear, trauma, sadness, anger, injury of some sort. And they are the black sheep. They are, you know, all the ego states are aware of one another, and these ones cause trouble. And you'll notice it. You'll notice this in people where we've all seen this at some point with a friend, where it's like they like shift. You know, it's like happy, sad, and it's like whoa, and you're like instantaneously, and they come out because this is where the word triggered is really effective and appropriate. something triggers this ego state to come out. By the way, there's only one, explaining the model, there's only one ego state that's facing the world at any time. We call it the executive, or it becomes executive.
Okay.
So right now you have Ron, the authority ego state that's talking. I can talk about this sort of stuff. Of course, I can have the goofy state too. It would be completely different. By the way, these ego states have sometimes different tonality. They have different ages. Sometimes they have different physiology as well, like the way they'll sit, whatever. Sometimes they have like physical things, like one might be more sensitive or allergic to something. It's really powerful stuff. So ego state therapy is the idea of, in its most simple way to explain it, is connecting with these Vedic states through hypnosis. So we put a person into a hypnotic state. By the way, we use trance and hypnosis interchangeably. They mean the same thing. We put a person in that state, and then, not going into all the details, but you connect with that part and you find out what it wants and needs. And then essentially what you're doing is you're doing an ego state negotiation. So these are really sad, injured, hurt parts. They are hurting, and they're usually, the other parts don't like them because they're screwing up their life in some sense. They show up a lot of times at the wrong time.
Kill the vibe.
They kill the vibe, and sometimes even worse, they'll like self-sabotage is a perfect example of a wrong ego state in the executive. And through this process of therapy, we listen to them. We listen to this marginalized part of a person's personality that's suffering. And if you imagine like a classroom, a giant classroom of kids, not a small, giant one, and you've got one kid sitting in the corner and everyone doesn't like them, like they cause problems, they're stinky, whatever. And imagine if you said, okay, everyone, I'd like to invite that child here, and everyone must sit and listen to this child. You don't have to like them. You don't have to do anything, but you must listen to them because it's their turn, the talking stick. It's their turn to talk.
Like some understanding.
Yes, and I believe that just the act of allowing a marginalized part, just like a marginalized person, to speak, to express themselves and what they're feeling, that in and of itself is an incredibly healing state to be in. But we go far further than that. So that starts, we basically find out what their wants and needs are. And I'm very fastidious about making notes and stuff through this process, the way I teach it. And then we go to the resourceful parts, and we'd say, who would like to help? It's ego state negotiation. And interestingly enough, when these ego states, these Vedic ego states, are given what they want, and sometimes, by the way, it's a completely internal process. Sometimes it's not like they want something like, I want to go on a bike ride once a week. Sometimes they want something like that, and that's going to keep them happy. And you make an agreement. You're going to go on every Tuesday at 4 p.m. You're going to go on a bike ride, and they're satisfied with that as long as they keep it up. Sometimes it might just be really internal. It's like, I want like a room full of pink teddy bears. Okay, that's what they want. And then so we go to a resourceful state. We ask who would like to help this person, who would like to help this state. And they all have different names. They name themselves. They have an age. Sometimes their voice, literally, people will talk like a child. And we basically give them what they want and double check, make sure they're getting what they want. And then something very beautiful happens. When the Vedic ego state receives what it needs and accepts it and believes it, it changes. The term I use is transmute, not just transform. And I use transmute because it's like literally energy changing one form to another. And this goes to bandwidth, which we're talking about. This is a different version of that bandwidth. When you're suffering, like, here's an example. If you stub your toe, you don't care what's happening in the presidential debate that's on the TV.
In that moment. Yeah.
In that moment. That's the priority. It's taking all of that tension. Now, if you think about a part of you that's suffering or a bunch of parts that are suffering in the course of the minutes of your day, how many times, if you could walk around with a pad of paper and you could write like a police pad and write down every thought you had, and at the end of the day, you're like, I keep thinking, I've been having negative thoughts about my ex-girlfriend like 70 times a day. Okay, then. Well, right. That's a recurring thing.
Taking up a lot of bandwidth.
Taking up a lot of bandwidth. So when we do this process in heals, healing, something fantastic happens. Not only is that part healed, it stops becoming a drain on resources. So all of a sudden that bandwidth that it was eating up because of its trauma, not only is that gone, becomes an asset. So your bandwidth increases. And that is why I am I bang the drum for this type of therapy that I'm doing, because it is, I call it radical positive transformation. You actually are getting something out of it. You're not just getting healed from what you're suffering from, this part suffering from, but now it's an effective resource because it's got what it needed. And all the time it was doing that, whatever it is, that behavior or going to wherever it was going, or just maybe just being upset, gone. Like it's gone, and it's now available as something else. And again, they may, how much they choose to help, and sometimes it's just like, okay, you know, the burden of doing a job that you don't want to do sometimes is bad enough. Anyway, it's
so fascinating. I thought a little bit about it in like a classroom setting again, and a lot of times when kids are demonstrating their worst, most disruptive behavior, assigning them a job and giving them a responsibility is like the thing that works to snap them out of it. And it's just like you're saying, they're just immediately kind of code switching into this new ego state where all of a sudden whatever limiting belief they have that's probably making them think, oh, I don't understand this, I'm just going to talk to this person, whatever. Instead, they're like, I'm a helper, I'm responsible. It's amazing.
It's beautiful.
Would you say your intentions of this field of study, and like, was it motivated by a desire to help other people with it, or sort of a curiosity of how much you could control and manipulate and improve your own mind?
So, good question. By the way, also the movie Inside Out, really, if you ever need to, like,
I did just watch it recently.
There's the new sequel out, by the way, the most successful film this summer. One of my students in class asked, is this like Inside Out? I said, this is exactly like Inside Out. Everyone should watch it.
I saw the first one. I liked it.
I've only seen the first one.
I haven't seen the second one yet either, but it very much is like that.
I was surprised that I liked it. Because it kind of feels like, oh, that's like, how do you make that a good movie?
Yeah, and sadness keeps messing everything up until they allow sadness space to be sad.
This is, by the way, I should have just led with that.
Yeah, exactly.
To see Inside Out, it's exactly like Inside Out.
It's like
okay,
that.
Great.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I explained it very
complicated.
That's another episode.
Simplified.
To answer your question, my journey to this is, so I do have a part of me which is a very strong helper. I don't know where it comes from. I think it's been around since I was very young. I like to help people. I like to help people with my abilities, not just to randomly help, but there's a little part of that. I don't know if it's a spiritual thing too, if it's the way, like, religiously that I was raised, we should help people. Maybe that's a small part of it. There's also just a desire. I think also I see what I've been given as a gift. Anything that I've done as a gift, you know, my ability to chop onions is a gift to someone somewhere. And so for me, if I can take that and leverage that to reaching people and helping with them, like, I guess that's one of my kinks. Like, I don't know why, but it sort of is there. So for me, I studied NLP. I got my NLP practitioner, then my hypnosis, then my master NLP practitioner, then my master hypnosis. And then in class, my teacher, a guy named Mike Mandel, who's, I think, the greatest hypnotist in the world. He's fantastic. He's a teacher. He was just, by the way, the big hypnosis conference just happened in Vegas. It's called Hypnothoughts Live. So many of my friends I haven't been there yet. All of my friends are there. A lot of them were speakers, and it's like the greatest hypnotist nerd party out there. So on the to-do list. My teacher, Mike Mandel, has been my teacher for 15 years and the greatest hypnotist on earth as far as I'm concerned. He brought up ego state in class a number of years ago, like I'm thinking like 10 years ago. And I was interested in it, and then I was like, how do you do this stuff? And there wasn't anything out there. There wasn't any training. And so I got frustrated by it, and I started reading all the books. And then when I read all the books, I started putting together my own version of it based on what I learned and kind of adapting it and what I do. And then from there, I came up with a sort of a simplified system of it, of how to do it specifically. And I with my clients at the time, so I have a small practice. Like, I'm a producer and director. I love doing what I do. I also love helping people. So I accommodate this part by having a small practice. I work with maybe 5 to 12 people a year, depending on my timing, circumstances. At one point I wanted to do it full time, and then I really felt the absence of not being in the film world. Like that's a big thing for me. But I realized I can still do both.
Yeah.
Why not? And I get to meet and work with wonderful people. So it's a fantastic feeling for me. So I started folding it into my practice slowly because I'm very methodical, and also I call it psychic surgery. If someone's going to let me into the intimacy of their mind, I have a very strong responsibility program. I want to make sure that they're in the best care they have. So eventually I started doing it more and more, and I was like, wow, this stuff is powerful, as I've shared with you. And then from there, it's like, I would say maybe 90% of the work that I do now is ego state. I have a number of other modalities, as I said, NLP and hypnosis, but there's like some energy stuff in there and some other modalities that I don't think about. Like, we used a whole bunch of different modalities when we were working together.
Yeah.
So when I'm working with someone, I'm not saying, oh, I'm going to do this with you. It's like me driving my car into a mechanic and saying, only use a crescent wrench. He's like, why are you telling me how to do this? Let me tune up the car. So for me, it's like that process of listening and doing the pre-talk and doing the intakes correctly. I listen to them, and then sort of it comes to me as a formulation, saying, oh, maybe I should do this. And we did all sorts of fun stuff.
Yeah.
We did timeline, we did hypnosis, we did a little bit of ego state. So it was like, that was fun. Like,
and it was very helpful, I should say. I do recommend your service. I think I was in a good place to receive it. Like, there's no guarantee. Not just anybody could come hang out with you 5 times and get all the benefit I got necessarily. Yeah. But I highly recommend it. I thought it was really nice and powerful. Certain days I would come home like exhausted because it was like a lot in a good way.
It's mental work.
Yeah.
And I think to give you credit too, and this is where we talked about the agency and the self-development. So it's like the difference between working at home and then going to the gym, or just going to the gym. Like, you still get the same results. But you had done so much of the work. And also there's a very important word, and I stress this a lot, that was taught to me a long time ago, which is threshold. By the way, it applies to everything. And threshold is really, how ready are you to make the change? How ready are you personally? Not someone telling you have to make the change. You have to know very clearly and specifically what it is that you want to change. And the urgency has to be now. If those criteria are not met, you won't change. It applies to every single thing that you do in life. And as a candidate for doing the work that we did, you were like, I love clients. In fact, in my dream, and most of them are, I want them kicking down the door of threshold. You were curious, but once we got going, you were like, hold my beer. Because you were so at threshold, and you had also done the work. And this is one of the hard things too. I was raised to be very, very independent in terms of dealing with my own problems. Don't really go to people. Don't ask for help. Sure. And I think it's, I don't want to paint it with a big broad brush, but it's for a certain era, a very masculine way of raising like boys. Old school. It is old school. Boys, figure it out. Like, figure it out by yourself. Don't ask for help. It might be a sign of weakness or shame, whatever it is. So for me, it's like I slowly start to come around and ask for help, and I have wonderful practitioners that do work with me. When it comes to doing work with people, though, the thing that I want to test for, that's the right word, is assess for, is threshold, because that way you're going to have a greater result. And that's why you're going to feel like you were there to do the work, but you've been doing the work for a long time as well. And you're committed to it. Your intention is there. And I think we can do a lot of work on ourselves to help ourselves. But part of it is when you're saying, and for you came to it through curiosity, to say, I'm ready to get that help. I'm ready. I've done as much working out from videos and at home. I'm going to go to the gym and meet a professional trainer who's going to give me the things that I don't have, so I can get even further along to where I want to be. And I think that that's an insight as well. So like, I just say, like, kudos, check mark. The stuff I'm still thinking of the stuff that we worked on.
That was really great.
And it's like your goals were big, lofty ones, and I was like, this is what I'm doing. I'm just waiting for him to happen now. I'm just looking at the calendar because I'm waiting to check that off. Like he said he was going to do that, and that's going to happen.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right, one last thing. We've been going hour and 26 minutes.
Days.
So time did really fly.
Days,
We lost,
exactly, yeah.
Did it feel like an hour and a half to you? Doesn't to me necessarily.
I'm getting antsy. My body.
Exactly.
But my mind is
Okay.
content.
It's the chair, maybe bathroom break.
My skin keeps
Yeah.
sticking to the chair,
It's
so
that
then when
time
I
of
try
year.
to move, I
Yes.
just have to pull it
Well,
off.
that's a ready sign to tie a bow on this.
Well, I just wanted to address one more thing.
Sure.
Because with hypnotism, there's the, stage performance, magic trick, hypnotism. Sometimes they have like 10 people lined up and like grabbing people and making them fall asleep or making them think they're chickens. Or we did a YouTube video once where a hypnotist came to our office and one of the guys we were with got like full blown hypnotized. Like he thought his belt was a snake. He suddenly was told the chair is electric and he reacted, and it was crazy. And the guy was saying, he's like, I could get that guy to rob a bank right now. Like that's how in he is. So anyway, what is that? Is it ever... I'm very cynical or skeptical when I see like 12 people on stage, like doing that. Like, all right, at least most of them are like, I just, fine, I'll go along with it, So how real is all that stuff and what's going on?
100% real. And I'll give you the simple answer. It's context. How are you going to behave in church versus how are you going to behave with your buddies at a pub? It's the context. When you're going into a hypnosis show, even if you don't know the details, you're there to have fun. It's a stage show. People volunteer to be on stage. They don't say, I insist you come on stage. People are racing to be there. They know that something fun or weird is going to happen. So they are, and stage hypnosis is a very particular thing. My teacher was a stage hypnotist, and I saw him. It was freaking amazing. I love stage hypnosis shows. Obviously quite different, but a lot of the same basic stuff that we would, in terms of getting person into state, they're obviously much faster. They're also vetting for people when they're bringing them up on stage. Also, how deeply they go, how quickly they go into trance. And when you see them yanking on someone, this is a shock induction. I could do that with anyone. Like they're just, those are shock inductions, meaning you just go into hypnosis very quickly and you start crank on someone's neck and they go out. There's a lot of those as well. You can do other inductions, or I just want you to close your eyes and breathe. And when we did work our day, you were in a profoundly deep trance, right? So there's a lot of other, it becomes inside baseball. And for those who don't understand hypnosis, it doesn't matter, but you have to think of it as a context, right? When you come to me therapeutically to work, the things that we're going to talk about and say are things you would never do on stage.
Sure.
Because it's a different context, just in the same way, like consciously the way you'd behave. So those people they're there to play. They're there to party.
Right. So they're not faking it, but they're complicit because they want that to happen.
Yeah.
And their subconscious wants it to work. That's what they came to do.
They're willing. And that's so
you could, if I wanted to sit on that stage and say, I'm not playing ball with anything, would it be a challenge for me to not get
If you say you're not
hypnotized?
playing ball, what would basically happen is you wouldn't go into trance, and the hypnotist would say, "Thank you very much. Go enjoy the show from the audience."
Right. Okay. So you have to be willing.
You absolutely. Well, this goes to the very, very first thing we said. It's like it can't be done to you. It's a naturally occurring thing. Again, this is the whole thing. Is there coercion? Is hypnosis coercion? And it's like, no, it's not. You have to be a willing participant. In fact, we talk about the hypnotist subject tacit agreement. And in fact, one of my opening lines, once I do it once, I don't repeat it again. But it's like, Paul, you've come to me. We're going to do this work together, and I'm going to use hypnosis. Do I have your permission to put you in a hypnotic state? You're nodding already. He loves hypnosis. By the way, it's a great freaking feeling. People do like.
No, I'm very intrigued.
It's like.
Well, okay, what about on stage? If I say I'm not playing ball, but I'm going to pretend to play ball. I'll pretend. I'll consciously make the choice to seem like I'm hypnotized, but I won't be.
Now you're losing me.
So he'll pull me. I'll do the thing.
Yeah.
Am I hypnotized?
Okay.
If I'm doing what he wants me to do, but I'm saying I'm not playing ball, I'm just faking it.
So first of all, there are many indicators of trance.
Yeah.
And when you study trance, you're going to learn what they are. So it's very easy to see that someone's faking. However, there is a great saying, and my teacher knows all the quotes and from all the books, but I can remember the name of the quote, not the person who said it. Anything that supposes trance is trance. So you faking a trance is you in a trance.
I'm in a trance, right? So you can't really fake it.
You can't fake it.
You can't fully fake it.
You can't fake it.
Because if you're faking it, and he says you're a chicken, act like a chicken, and you go, bok, bok,
then you're doing it.
Yeah, you're like, no, but I'm not really doing it. I'm faking it.
Exactly.
But he's like, but this is exactly what I wanted you to do.
You have to also think about that mindset of that person. It's like going to a magic show and saying, there's a trap door underneath. He's not a real magician. This is an illusion. It's like everyone in the show has the suspension of disbelief. That's what they want. So are there people like that? Or I'm going to show that this guy's a fraud. Fraud of what? Like it's like you're going to a hypnosis show. You're there for a reason. So that's actually less of a problem than you might think there is, that people are doing it. And also, you can't fake it very much. And the other thing that a good stage hypnotist would be looking for is not just that a person can go into trance, because everyone can go into trance. They want you to go into trance quickly, and also to be able to deepen you very quickly. And there's different deepeners, and they do them really eloquently on stage very quickly. It's also you want people who are actually responding externally. So a perfect example is I saw a stage show by my teacher, Mike Mandel, and he talked about, like, I remember watching it, and people are on a roller coaster. And so people are in there just like, and he's making the sound like, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. The ground is falling further away. You're going higher up. And this is the highest roller coaster you've ever been on. And people are leaning, and they're holding on to the bars. Some of them are holding the person next to them. And there's a person sitting at the end who's just like this. They're having the same experience, but it's internal. They're having a blast, but not a good show for people in the audience. You want the people who are screaming.
The visible, the people who show it externally.
Yeah, and you're doing a lot of things. You know, it's like, you know, I'm going to take the mic off the mic stand, and then you're like, you go like, wow, this is and you're holding it like a snake, and people will scream. They'll scatter off the stage. Like, those are the ones you want. And again, that's how they pick them. And there's a lot to stage hypnosis, and it's wonderful. I don't have the confidence to do it. I probably know a lot of the techniques. I've seen a lot of them. Not my thing, but boy, oh boy, do I love a good show. Because they're moving so quickly, and I know what they're doing. And my teacher, he used to do a show that, I don't know how he did this. He used to do, like, I think 2 or 3 shows a day at the X in Toronto, which is like a summer 12 or 14 day thing. He would be doing it in a band shell, free show. Anyone could go up, people from the audience. And it would just be like unbelievable. Like I lost my train of thought there, what I was explaining, but it's just watching
it's like watching a sleight of hand magician. When you've studied magic,
this is
you're
what
like,
he would do.
Wow, I know it's not magic. And I'm like, I can't do it, but what he just did is really impressive.
This is what he would do. Thank you for reminding me. I know I would remember. He was so good. He would literally be running a clinic. He would be saying da-da-da-da-da, fractionation. And we'd be like, oh, I know what he would literally be, people in the audience didn't know what the hell he was talking about. He's talking like inside baseball. And we're just like, he's literally teaching us what he's doing while he's doing it in real time while giving a show. And I was like,
incredible.
So cool. That was really wild.
Wow.
So I hope that answers your question.
It does. It absolutely does. And this was awesome. I feel like I could talk to you for many more hours. We have talked for many hours.
We've clocked in a lot this year, and we can definitely do it again. It's my pleasure to be here. And thank you for letting me ramble and ramble.
Absolutely. You're a great guest and really interesting guy to talk to.
Thank you so much.
I hope you come visit us in Tucson.
Yes.
So this is probably the last episode in this house.
We keep saying that, but who knows?
We keep saying it. So maybe we'll do one more.
I don't know.
Squeeze in one more if you can.
We'll try to squeeze one more in.
Packing is a priority, but yes, definitely do it if you can.
But
we're getting to the bottom of
thanks for finally doing it. I've been trying to get you on the show for a long time, so I'm glad we finally got you.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here. I'm going to miss you guys,
I'll miss you too.
but we'll always be connected through this. It'll be online.
If nothing else.
If nothing else, if this is our last conversation, we're definitely this. But yeah, I look forward to further conversations and maybe more of these if we want. And thank you for giving me a forum to share this information. And this was awesome. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Appreciate you.
Keep up the great work. How interesting. What a
you.
wild ride. And congrats about the masterclass. That's huge.
Yes, it's really, really thrilling. I've got new students from around the world, and they are they're really soaking it up. They're so eager, and I want to share. It took me a while to figure it out because I couldn't find any training, and so this was in the works for a while. And I'm like, I want to be able to have the result. I want other people to be able to have the results that I'm having, and I want to give them sort of a clear path, like a sort of a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps to do it. And so it's my joy to be able to share what I'm doing with them, and they're wonderful people. So I wish them luck. Wish you luck.
I wish you luck.
Wish you luck.
Yeah.
All that info will be in the description if you want to get a hold of Ron and take his class or talk to him or get hypnotherapy or
anything.
He serves great tea. Good guy to hang out with.
That's right.
Anyway, awesome. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, everyone.
You, Ron. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Ciao.
Hell yeah.
And
hour
scene.
40.